everybody, I'm Joey Paul and I'm an indie author and welcome back to my channel. You can't see, but on this shoulder is a Miss Tortellini and on this shoulder is a Miss Mink. You can see the Miss Mink, you can't see the Miss Tortellini because she's covered by the mic. Basically they both decided they want to be on my shoulders and I'm not going to argue with them. So this was a topic requested by one of my viewers about how I work on multiple projects, and since it's not been something I've talked about before and hadn't seen talked about much on Authortube, I thought I would do a whole video about it. Just to be clear, I have been writing 2 projects at the same time drafting wise for a number of years, and in the past 3 or 4 years I've added revising a project and sometimes going through professional edits at the same time. It's not something for everyone, and while I am juggling revisions and edits, I want to focus more on drafting because it's something that a lot of writers try to do, and I'll throw in some tips about how to juggle revisions and edits as well. So here we go. Number 1, start small. This is something where you need to really know yourself really well. You need to know your limits, because if you can manage to juggle multiple projects, then you're probably already doing it. A lot of writing advice out there talks about how you should stick to one thing, and I think that's good advice, but if you're deciding to branch out, if you feel up to it, then you should start small. When I started writing 2 books at once, I set it up so that I would write 1 chapter of one book one day, and then switch on a completely different day. This is how I still do it. I set aside a certain day for each project, whether that's drafting or revising. Editing time usually happens daily, and then I'll set aside a certain time of day to focus on editing. It's really important to me to keep them all separate, simply because it helps me stay focused and on track. If you're someone who is really organised, then this is a plus, but overall you need to start small. Don't put all the stress on yourself. Add little loads when you're sure that you'll transition to be able to juggle too. Number 2, rest is important. One thing I've learned in all this time is that rest days when I'm not working on any project are really important. If I push myself to write or revise etc. every single day, then I am going to burn out, and you may find the same happens to you. Everyone works differently and that's okay, but you need to remember that there will be days when you don't feel like writing, and sometimes you will need to push through and other times you will need to listen to your body. Rest and days off are non-negotiable. You need to take some time off work, otherwise it's going to start having an impact on your work, on your health, and on the way you feel about your stories. Number 3, planning matters. I covered this slightly in the first point, but I wanted to go over it in more detail. When you've got this huge load of things to do, it can be really overwhelming to look at the big goals and then know how the hell you're going to manage it all. This is where planning comes in, whether that's planning and outlining or planning your time, whatever works for you. Personally, I break things down into small chunks, usually on a monthly status and then again on a weekly and daily status. I'll link the video up here where I go over my planner. It's the kind of advice that gets said often about how you should break your goals into smaller chunks before you start them, and it's said a lot because it's true. So I know that the majority of books I write have 62 chapters, some vary, but generally they're around that mark. I break it down into 10 chapters of each book every month, and then on a daily basis we'll break down which chapters will be done that day and how many need to get done that week, and so on. It usually helps you to keep focused on the goal, but also allows you to see how you're going to manage this really huge task in front of you. Number 4, do you get confused with so many projects? This is a question that I've been asked so many times, and I'll be honest, it's happened once or twice, usually when I'm in the early stages of that first draft. But once I get into the meat of the story, then I don't ever confuse one for the other. Usually because they're so different and also have different voices, so I know what I'm writing about and writing towards. When revising on top, there's nothing to get confused about, because when I revise I have a more detailed outline, so I know then what needs to be happening and when. Editing is the same, but because it's done in a chapter by chapter basis, it's not confusing either. Basically all that to say is if you're worried about getting confused between your projects, then only draft one and revise another completely different story. At one time I was writing dystopian and contemporary, so there was 0 chances of getting confused. Now I'm writing 2 urban fantasies and revising another urban fantasy and editing a dystopian. It sounds like I get them mixed up, but they're all really clear in my head, so it makes sense to me. Number 5, don't you get writer's block /bored/stressed? This is another question I get asked a lot, and I'll answer each in turn. The main reason I started drafting 2 projects at once was because I was blocked on one and desperate to jump into a new idea. So I told myself, okay, you can write as many chapters of the new idea as there is of the blocked one, and then we'll reassess. It worked really well. I write 2 chapters before I switch, and they feel like they're the way that I don't generally get writer's block anymore. As for being bored, again, not really. I do sometimes open up my chapter today, sigh and want to switch, but sticking to that schedule has really helped me stay on track, so I've made myself focus on the project for that day. I do occasionally find it hard to write that project for a day or 2, but then it passes and it's fine. As for getting stressed while writing, yeah, that happens, but stress is sometimes part of life. I make sure that I take the time off, and that's one thing that I will always advocate for because it's something that we all need to remember. There's a lot of talk about the hustle, about having to be productive to be valid, and while in the short term it's a good thing to remember, it's not sustainable for the long term. And finally, number 6. What do you recommend everyone do this? This is a question that really makes me cringe because who am I to tell anyone else how to write? Just because something works for me doesn't necessarily mean it will work for everybody else. I've been a big advocate of everyone using their own path to write. There is no one else out there who has the same writing process. We can take advice and listen and learn and adapt and try, but we can't learn our process from somebody else. What works for me has been found through experimentation, trying this, trying that, and hoping that maybe I can take something from it that will work for me. And that's basically how the writing process works. You try things, they work, they don't, but if they do, you fix it into your own way of doing things. So I can't recommend it for anyone, but I will say that if you want to try it, go ahead, and if it works, great, and if not, don't feel like you've done something wrong. You are valid as a writer no matter what your process is. So there we go. Those are basically the questions that I asked, the tips I have for juggling multiple projects, and why I decided to start doing it in the first place. I really hope that helps you all, and I hope that it helps you see a side of basically how I work and all the rest of it. Do you have any questions about juggling multiple projects, or do you have any suggestions for future videos? If you do, let me know down below. So that's all I've got time for today. If you want to support my channel, you can comment, like, or subscribe. I post new videos on Thursdays. You can find me all over social media, and my books are available everywhere. And don't forget to pick up Cramping Chronicles, The First Twinge, all the links for which are listed below. Thanks for watching, and remember to keep writing. Bye!